Chapter 2 is the absolute best chapter of Vinland Saga, and you can absolutely at me on that. But hold up, let me explain myself, big dog. See, about a month ago, I ran into Peak Fiction while at a bookstore, and I really tried fighting my inner demons to avoid buying it, and well. Not a particular special story, but let me cook for a second. You see, Vinland Saga is my favorite, well, anything in the world. Favorite book? Vinland Saga. Favorite character? Vinland Saga. Favorite car? Vinland Saga. Favorite saga? Cell Saga is second to Vinland Saga. It was always a constant struggle between it, One Piece, and Steins Gate because that's my big three. But Vinland Saga for now it's just the one. You know, no big three, just big me and all that. Pretend that reference isn't weeks late though. Now, even though I am caught up on the Vinland Saga manga, am I really caught up on the Vinland Saga manga? I've never really actually read the prologue arc, which meant I was really surprised when I opened my Vinland Saga prologue arc book 1 that I own, and what greets me on chapter 1 page 1 is actually season 1 episode 7. That's when I realized it was pretty much what happened at the start of One Piece, where the first chapter, Romance Dawn, was pushed back to a later episode. Now, I understand what Wit Studio was cooking with this decision, building up Thor's first and showing us Thorfinn's not so gradual consumption by vengeance. The opposite of that, his instant consumption by vengeance. His switch up was as instant as how happy I'd be if you dropped a like and a subscribe. I'm the Vinland Saga too. So before I read the start of the manga, the anime was perfect, down to the last minute detail, but now, not so much. I think the manga's beginning is way better, specifically in chapter 2, so let's talk about it. Vinland Saga. Vinland Saga. So to start with, this is my objective opinion, so I don't want to see any actuallys in the comments. You will have to take this outside and box about it. In Minecraft, of course. But what makes me say Vinland Saga Book 1, Volume 1, Chapter 2 is the best chapter in Vinland Saga? Why are you so impatient? I was getting to it. Jeez! In order to prove what I'm talking about, I watched this exact chapter in both the anime and read it in the manga, and from that I can tell you absolutely nothing without going a bit deeper into what happens. So if you're not on chapter 2 of the manga that came out 19 years ago, spoilers ahead for the chapter that came out also 19 years ago, I guess. Alright, so what happens on the second chapter of Peak Fiction? What did I just say about impatience? I'm getting to it. This chapter, which is called Somewhere Not Here, pay attention, this will be on the test later, starts us off with Askeladd and the boys returning to what's basically their home base in the Jutland Peninsula. After a successful year of getting up to some ludicrous tomfoolery here and there, you know, they do a little trolling. They just got back from that. And yeah, I called him Askeladd, not Askeladd. I'm pretentious, what of it? Everyone is pretty hyped because they can finally take a load off. It's winter, so it's time for them to get a break from all the murder and pillaging. But Thorfinn, he can't be hyped. He's busy mewing while sharpening his blades. He's imagining running Askeladd's fade, probably, and well, does he know? Chat, do you think he knows? The townspeople are in awe as they look at the treasure haul the boys brought back from all the atrocities they committed all year. Wholesome stuff. We're introduced to a little bro who thinks he's a shonen protagonist and wants to join Askeladd's crew and become the king of the pirates. Now, I know I already used this line before, but does he know? And in the anime, Thorfinn bumps into him while he's looking for a spot to sulk until the plot needs him again. And Blood thinks he's tough, so he wants Thorfinn to apologize for bumping into him. That obviously didn't happen. This is prologue arc Thorfinn, not the one who apologizes. After all that, we find out that even with the worst hairline in his entire crew, Askeladd still has that Ohio skibbity riz. He's just that guy. In less important news though, he's discussing taxes with the feudal lord of this region, Gorm, who he refers to as uncle. Now, in Japanese, he calls him Ojiki, which, yeah, you could translate it to uncle, but I don't think it's indicative of blood relation. Through this conversation, we get one of the first important themes of this chapter in Gorm's obsession with money. Money which he used to purchase Hordaland, the slave he bought with the money. He says to Askeladd that she's not very good at being a slave because she was the daughter of a lord in Hordaland, which is in Norway apparently. And then Askeladd presents the actual main theme of this chapter and a major theme in the entire series when he says, it's not Hordaland that sucks, it's Gorm who doesn't know how to use her. Saying anyone can be manipulated, you just gotta peep game and lock in. His words, not mine. He says this while looking at an approaching Thorfinn dead in the face, in case it wasn't clear who he was talking about. If you're still confused, you should probably ask Askeladd to point at him too. He asks Gorm to be the witness for their upcoming fight, which Gorm agrees to. Now, I'm not gonna get too deep into it, but this is a pretty good fight, and it's also where I will give the anime's plot progression more props, because there's more of a journey to see Thorfinn actually hold his own in this fight, compared to how he couldn't in previous duels, whereas this is the Thorfinn we're introduced to off the bat in the manga. He's already that guy when we meet him back during the siege of the Frankish forces. It's not that big of a deal, but it's still a better lead up to this duel in the anime. But then, in this fight, Astolat shows off how he's actually a dog nigga like Rex Wisconsin. He does Thorfinn absolutely filthy when he sees he's holding his own, so he decides to stop boxing with Thorfinn and start swinging at Thorfinn's emotions instead, by basically acting like he doesn't even remember Thorfinn's dad, asking if Thorfinn is even sure he was the one who killed him. He's basically undermining Thorfinn's 10 or so years of revenge. Absolutely fiendish behavior. Obviously, this sends Thorfinn into a rage, so he crashes out and ends up getting further sunned by Astolat, and this is how the duel closes out. The scene right after takes us into the most important section of the chapter, probably the series as well, as far as expanding on what Astolat was saying to Gorm earlier in the chapter. The crew are eating and celebrating all the war crimes they committed. Thorfinn is obviously not with them because he's on the dock sulking. So our shonen protagonist approaches Astolat and starts glazing instantly. He really wants to join the crew. Nothing is coming between this guy and his war crimes. Astolat isn't really paying him too much attention though, and they both watch as Gorm starts hitting Hoda for being bad at her job. This is where Astolat says one of my favorite quotes in the series. He laughs as he says, "Just look at him. Oh, what a sight this is. A man, slave to gold, holds a whip and beats the slave he bought with that gold as if to claim he is the master. He just doesn't see it for himself. Every human being is a slave to something." It's a really powerful line, but it's wasted on our shonen protagonist because brother is flabbergasted. He doesn't really get it. Of course, the next page is Thorfinn again. In case you weren't aware who Astolat was subtly referring to this time either, this is another one of those scenes that makes the manga. We don't have the anime episodes leading up to this to get a glimpse of Astolat's character, since this is literally just chapter 2. So Yukimura sensei establishes the character with these small hints in what he says, laying the groundwork for the eventual reveal of who Astolat is later in the arc. The following scene is then our introduction to Thor in the manga, and the side of him is also our first glimpse at a Thorfinn who doesn't look angry or isn't mewing. Then we see young Thorfinn for the first time when Thor is talking to him. They have this whole moment, and its purpose is to introduce us to whatever innocence is left in present Thorfinn before we go into the flashback that fleshes this scene out. But before that, we see a hand reaching out to Thorfinn, and he immediately swings a knife at the source, stopping just short of Hoda's neck. I feel so bad for her, man. She's having the worst day today. Despite all that though, she asks him if he's a thrall, which is a slave. And he is, but he doesn't really see it that way, so he denies it in the moment, saying he's nothing like her. He's a free man, a warrior. And she says she thought they both seemed similar, at which point he says if he were her, he'd just make Gorm past tense and run away, to which she replies that she doesn't really feel that idea, going on to ask where she could even go where she could feel even remotely safe. Where could she find safety across the seas in a land without war or slavery? Some kind of Vinland. Somewhere, not here. The difference between the manga and the anime here is that in the manga, Thorfinn starts thinking back to hearing stories about Vinland from Leif, and that neatly transitions us to his young Thorfinn section of the story. But since the anime has been there, done that, we don't really need to go back there. So Thorfinn starts telling her about Vinland, but instead of cutting to a fantastical story about Vinland, we go right back to scenes of war and also get our introduction to Canute, which means we're pretty much done with chapter 2 of the manga. That was a lot, but you have to remember that the chapter was around 40 pages, but now that I've gone over the events, what do I mean by this being the best chapter? I mean, as far as getting places, we don't even go near Vinland, but I still feel like this chapter, more than chapter 1, and way more than episodes 1 through 4, sets up the story as well as the themes prevalent throughout the entire prologue arc. The concept of every human being a slave to something isn't really new, but it really is something true to the story of Vinland Saga. Whether it be prologue arc Thorfinn being a slave to revenge, Canute being a slave to the crown, or even Astolat, the great sayer of stuff himself, being a slave to his supposed destiny, they're all driven by something they cannot see is actually dictating all their actions. The reason I say the manga start is way better than the animes is because of this reason. I feel like us starting with the vengeful Thorfinn builds intrigue as to how we got to this point, and the small hints and the mysteries leading up to the Thor's flashback are a way better story structure than seeing it all in chronological order. And Hordaland and Thorfinn's conversation is a bit more clunky at the end as a result, because in the manga Thorfinn flashes back to Leif's optimistic stories about Vinland and how it is free from war and slavery. It's really not. While in the anime we just really cut to Svein and Floki talking about a war they're waging. Of course, I don't think the anime's version is bad, but I think the manga did it quite a bit better, that's all I'm saying. But rereading this book about 5 times now, I've remembered how much I loved Asher as a character when I was watching the prologue arc. He really was my favorite character before Thorfinn went into his whole J. Cole arc. Even now, Asher in terms of character writing is only one up by current Thorfinn. Right now, Thorfinn, Asher and Hild are the big 3 like they started a league. But Vinland Saga Book 1 is essentially just a best of Asher reel though, because he outshines early Thorfinn quite a lot, even while he was only really at the start and at the end of the book. So really, chapter 2 of all the chapters is the best because it's an amazing introduction and a great look into the dynamic between Asher and Thorfinn. It lays a lot of groundwork for what the story ends up becoming, and I love that. Almost as much as I love you hitting the like and subscribe buttons. Yeah, of course I'm gonna plug. I'm both a Tekken player and a YouTuber. You think I won't plug? Come on now. Also, while I'm here, I guess I should address the elephant in the room. Yeah, I did upgrade my stills with these beautiful ones. My friend Ghost Shaman, who isn't a horse, really pulled through with these commissions. Alright, that's enough of this video. Bye.